shrouded land. On a tower I will stand. Eternity is just a drop of time.
I think they can hear us.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Good afternoon, and welcome to Idle Insights. My name is Dylan, and I am coming to you live from my the safe and isolated confines of my home in beautiful Victoria, BC, Canada. I have a very special guest joining me today. But first, I would like to shout out and thank our moderator and co-producer, Jay. And of course, a huge thanks to Dungeons & Dragons for hosting us on the official D&D Twitch. It is and will always be an honor to be here. So my guest today is considered by many of us to be one of the pillars of the Dungeons & Dragons community. I first met her in person at the Stream of Many Eyes in 2018, but I became aware of her a lot earlier, in large part to her omnipresence in the online D&D community, somehow in the chat for basically every show. In addition to playing the Dragonborn cleric Orkira Ildrex on both D4 and now Heroes of the Plains, she also somehow finds time to be the dungeon master for Dungeon Drunks, and of course she is our community manager. Please welcome Lauren Urban to the show. Welcome, Lauren.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I've got to dispel this rumor that I am everywhere at once. Like, it was so much easier to do that back in the day when there was not a lot of streaming shows going on. And now there are 3 billion streaming shows, which is awesome. I love it. It's great. But I'm not everywhere. But thank you for saying such kind things about me. I appreciate it.
You know, you've got this reputation for being present. And the frequency with which somebody is like, well, Lauren would know. And then you're in chat and you're like, hi. We're like, whoa. So,
Jason Charles Miller and B. Dave Walters have been doing that a lot too, and I love them for it. But also, every once in a while, I'm not there, and it's one of those like, wait, what happened? So, yeah, I do try. It's been really nice to have a lot of the shows on while I'm working because I find it's something that I can listen to and kind of half pay attention to and just keep an eye on the chat and then go back to emails and social media and other stuff. So Oh, you're gonna open up. Okay, we're going right into this.
I'm
not
opening
know.
all 42 at once because it makes it faster. Like, look at this. Boom, done. Check
Okay,
out how decked out Orkira is now.
Yes, all the shinies. She is a
problem
matte,
solved.
She's a matte dragonborn with all the shinies. No,
Yeah.
what I wanted to talk about was the Orcura chest. I had not seen that chest until yesterday.
Oh, really?
And then I went to go open up a bunch of chests, and I went, oh, "This is adorable with the horns and the tail. It's amazing." So that was it. That's all I wanted to say. Is the
Now that I think
adorable.
about it, because we collaborate with everybody whose character comes to the game, we collaborate on this. I don't want to say it's a drawn out process, but it's a longer process because we have pretty significant lead time for a lot of our characters and just lining up people's schedules and availability and all that stuff as well. The first conversations tend to be half a year at least before the character is going to actually make their appearance in the game. It's just kind of like, it's a slow trickle for a bit. And then it just, at some point, it becomes a torrent of like, all right, well, here's all this stuff. Here's all the equipment graphics in various states of completion. Like, make sure you're okay with these. And here's the character. Here's their animations. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think we talk to people about the chests.
I did. Now, of course, the last couple of weeks of the process for Akira was weird because I'd come on board as an employee. But yeah, like, I do remember when we had those initial meetings in, at least for Orkira specifically, it was like October, November. And then because Heroes of the Plains or Heroes of the Vale or Beyond Heroes or whatever we were calling ourselves, that had been ongoing. There wasn't a lot of specific talks about Orkira, but there was definitely talks about the group of us. And there was just a bunch that all kind of happened right at the beginning. And then there was, like you talked about, just a little bit of a lag. And then there was a bunch more that happened. And I always kind of figured when I came on board, I'm like, am I messing up this process by suddenly being here? But yeah, the chest is adorable. Everything is, I'm so happy. And it's not just because I'm here working for you. It literally makes me giggle every single time. I still haven't gotten over it.
I still remember back when you mentioned, we're like, okay, well, we're looking at April 7th for the day to have Orkira make her debut. What do you think about that date? And you're like, I like it.
So you told me, and I was just like, oh, that's great. Keep me up to date. I know that stuff fluctuates, because once again, this is back in like November, and I went into the other room where my husband, Luke McKay, sits drawing art, and he had been doing comics for me for a while, and I said, did you tell them it was my birthday? Was that you? Did you do that? And he's like, no. And then eventually you got back to me and said, all right, we're like 95% sure it's going to be April 7th. And that's when I told you, like, that's my birthday. Did you know that? So yesterday was an interesting day.
Yeah. For us, I'm like, that's a Wednesday. That's
You're
a
not
Wednesday
wrong.
Next year.
It's a Wednesday next year that just happens to be also the anniversary of my birth. So I kind of got the best present on the planet yesterday.
It's pretty cool. And, and there she is, just walking away here.
I love the animation of her feet. This is such
wings.
a weird thing. I mean, the whole thing is awesome, but like the detail in her feet as her talons literally move and grip the ground. Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to see, but the detail there, when I first got sent a bunch of the animation proofs and was told, hey, what do you think of this? I was like fascinated watching her walk for about 5 minutes going, look at the detail there. Oh, what's that? That was the hardest part of the process, was not immediately telling all kinds of people, look at this, look at this, look at this.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's kind of one of my favorite things about this gig. I think in that we get to experience the joy of this part.
Yeah.
Granted, I mean, we've certainly had conversations internally, like people putting up their hand during a meeting and being like, "How come my character can't come to the game?" Which sometimes happens. But it's kind of, it's I think it's very cool that we get to work with a character that already has a community of people that love them, and we get to work with an awesome creator to bring the character to the game. And the best part about it is, certainly sometimes, like we look at there's a lore character we're going to bring. We're going to bring Artemis and Trary to the game. which we avoided for like the first 2 years of the game because it was just kind of an intimidating character, and one that when we'd done an early poll was really high up on the list of characters that people wanted to see. And we're like, oh no, like we can't screw that up. And then you kind of run into this question of like, oh god, this character is in like 30 novels spanning 30 years of work. Which version do people love? Which one should we do? There were debates over all sorts of different artistic details and how in the character's appearance, because there's different novel covers they've appeared on, but then the description in the book is a bit different, and it's just like you have all this stuff, and it's like it's a daunting thing for some characters. But when we get to work with a really cool creator, you're like, my character is this. This is my favorite piece of fan art, and like this is my favorite this other thing, and here's the key art we had made, and what would you like to know about them? And you have that, and so we get to work through that with somebody, which I think in many ways is one of the coolest parts.
And then I wonder, when you work with like Aaron M. Evans, and you're kind of straddling that middle ground of like, okay, here are characters that have a breadth of places that they are, but now you get to talk to the creator. Like that must be a nice middle ground experience, because you joke about where do we go with Artemis, who do we pick from, all of this stuff, but hey, we can just talk to Lauren about Orkira. When you were talking to me about Orkira, she changed subclasses, stats, and shows during the process. Like literally, I remember emailing you saying, so the stats that you have are no longer the stats that she has. Is that going to be a problem? Also, she's now a homebrew subclass, and she's not a light cleric anymore. Is that going to be a problem? So, I mean, that's the risk you run with a living character like mine. Oh, and sometimes the living characters die. I mean, there was certainly a moment about a year ago now in where Orkira was dead, and I'm like, well, I guess my game is never coming to Idle Champions now.
Well, so first of all, characters dying before they make it into the game is not unprecedented. Both Tom and Rhiannon did that with Quill and Sentry on High Rollers. Both of them died in the lead up to their characters' launches. And we're just like, come on, guys, really? They're like, sorry?
Listen, Mark is an amazing DM, but he's gonna... The dice landed where they did, and I'm just happy that I still get Quillic and Sentry in the game, because they're awesome characters, so... Yeah, and they were super fun to get additional cool skins and art for, too, because the characters evolve so much over the course of a show's lifetime. Just like Dragonborn clerics that get wings and become Phoenix clerics and so forth. Yeah, that was a very nice transition. I'm very impressed.
Okay, no worries.
So would you like to talk about Orkira? Well, I feel like I've talked about her so much this week that I don't even know where to start.
This is the week of Orkira. I mean, we're even going to write a song about Orkira on Tuesday, so there's lots more on the horizon. I hope you have some ideas for it.
I've been going back and forth between, do I come up with ideas, or am I supposed to be true to the format, which is I show up and we make this song in 2 hours.
You could show up with ideas, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know, because
if you showed up with like sheet paper and a composition and like lyrics, we'd be like, whoa, hold on. Yeah.
No, my guitar tab writing skills are pretty bad, so that would not be good.
Yeah, but a genre or genres of music that you think fit Orkira, and specific aspects of the character you think would be fun to focus on, that kind of thing. Yeah, bring it.
That I definitely have. I have a couple of options, one or two that may be easier for the wonderful and amazing Jason Charles Miller to pull off, because we all have our styles. I'm an oboist, and so if you ask me to do rock, there's going to be problems. So, and I know there's been jokes about me bringing the oboe next week, but I don't know if that's really what people want. I think they want to hear Jason sing and not me play, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know. I think they'd want to hear you play. I gotta move Briv over. Hold on. I'm trying to.
Briv, don't get up front. How am I supposed to heal you when you're all the way back there? Come on.
And then I gotta put Alindra in. Now
I was about to say, are you building a whole Heroes of the Plains formation? Because I know I did.
At this point we can.
Yeah.
I don't know how to use Orkira yet. because I haven't actually looked at Orkira much yet. I just unlocked Orkira during the stream, so
It's been a busy couple of days. It took me a couple hours to unlock Orkira because the event dropped, and then I went on Mars's stream, and I don't tend to have the game running when I'm streaming just to save on computer resources. So I actually was after Mars's stream, I had to go unlock Orkira myself. But I can talk about her if you'd like.
yes, please.
In game.
Oh yeah.
So in Idle Champions and in D&D, but in Idle Champions, Orkira is a support and healing character. She's best towards the back of your formation because she heals people who are not directly adjacent to her. So you want her, back in the Mako slot. And she offers buffs and debuffs, and depending on what path you pick, she will do more of one or the other. And if you come to our Discord, there's a lot of very interesting discussions about pairing her up with certain champions and how her buffs and debuffs stack. And they get a lot more into the math than I could. Not because I don't want to, but mostly because I just keep getting distracted by how adorable her feet are and how much she smiles when she, casts Burning Hands. So that's basically it. She's good towards the back of your formation, and she's there to help and every once in a while burn the entire field to the ground.
I was just thinking, I remember being part of the initial design call for Orkira.
Yeah.
Where everybody we work with gets the 25, 30 questions that Dupuy goes through. He's like, this is the checklist of questions we're going to ask. And we just start working our way through it. And usually during those meetings, Dupuy and myself, and depending on who else is there, we kind of just making notes about what can we do with this character in the game? What haven't we done? What abilities do we want to focus on? Obviously influenced by what you talk about in terms of how Orkira is played. And I'm happy to see that some of the ideas I had made it into the character.
Absolutely. There's a bunch of stuff that is perfect for a video game that are either things that I don't have in D&D, in the D&D character, or are just not D&D flavored abilities that I want because they work so well. They're so quintessential what Orkira would do if she had that power.
Yeah.
The one specifically is the power in where she'll hot swap with somebody who's about to die and tank for them for a little while.
Yeah.
Which is a ability that is 100% something in Idle Champions, but is something she role-playing wise has done in the game. But if she could have that as an actual power, if I could have a reaction where she immediately takes the place of somebody who is about to die and tanks that damage for them and gives that person a chance to heal, she would do that in a heartbeat. So I remember reading that going, I need to talk to Todd about having this power, and he's going to say no, but I need to ask. So yeah, I was very impressed with how a lot of her abilities and the way that she, in combat specifically, what she likes to do and what she can do, how that translated over into the game. It helps that her main abilities are she heals people and she burns people. So yeah. She's very well siloed.
Yeah, it's very Phoenixy.
Yeah. Yeah, she leans in. When you're going to pray to that kind of god, then you have to be all in. So, I mean, she was all in on the fire before the Phoenix came along. The Phoenix just helps a lot more. That's all.
Yeah. I'm curious because the character went in. This is the direction that Orkira has gone in. When you think about Orkira, do you still see Orkira as I guess the question I'm getting to is there's now a wildfire druid that is literally about burning and life and rebirth.
Yeah.
Has it ever crossed your mind maybe Orkira is actually becoming something more like this, or are you still clerics are the best?
Well, I mean, Lauren's opinion that clerics are the best are different than the Wildfire Druid not being, because the Wildfire Druid is awesome. And when I built the Phoenix subclass, the Wildfire Druid was in UA, and I flat out admit that there was some inspiration there for some of what I built into that character. There was a lot that was appealing in that. Orkira is always going to be a cleric. The passion that she has for helping and healing, for literal healing word and cure wounds and lesser restoration and all of that, and then the everything that comes with being a cleric in general is so core to her that as much as the wildfire druid was awesome and has some healing and has a lot of fire, being a druid is a different kind of character that she would never quite fit into. But I do love the final version of the wildfire druid. I've played it once and it's amazing. But there was a brief period of time where she almost multi-classed into some bard, but that was more story-based than anything. She'll always be mainly a cleric.
I mean, anybody can be a bard. There's a little bard in all of us.
So it's so easy. It's just, she almost took a level or two in bard, which would have helped with some things that she likes to do, especially with offering basically encouragement. Being able to do bardic inspiration would be up her alley. At the time I would back and forth for a couple of days. When I was given the option, I decided to mainline cleric, mostly because there wasn't enough in the bard that was going to really appeal. It was really just bardic inspiration. The rest of it didn't really help. And the idea of eventually maybe one day getting her to level 20 so that she could have divine intervention and just summon her god all the time was way too appealing. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but we're working on it.
Those level 20 games seem to be rare. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We got B-Dave around, so they're less rare. There's one happening this weekend.
It's true. Yeah. And it's almost like B-Dave specializes in running level 20 games, so
he's very good at it. High level D&D is super fun. I haven't run a level 20 game, but I've run a couple of very high level games, and my podcast, they're level 18. So we're getting there. It is definitely a different type of game, and especially for a one shot, you have to think about it differently. I love this. I'm going to go back to the game for a second. I love this level. Yeah, because this actually happened in our D&D game where we attacked an elder brain. So every time this comes up, I have flashbacks to the adventure in D&D that we did.
Does Briv jump as much in when you guys play as what happens in this game?
Jump? He is constantly on the move. He is.
Well, that's two levels in a row. Boom.
There you go.
Skipping levels.
Yeah. Like the fact that he jumps to do it is amusing. But it's one of those things where, once again, I think the designers did a really good job of taking a core concept of Briv, which is to rush in and to just move forward and to always be acting and always be going to go do a thing and not talking, and turn that into a game mechanic. Because does he have springs in his feet? Nah. Does he just rush in to battle on a regular basis? Yeah. Him and Freely are a duo for sure.
Yeah. I was just looking at some of the questions that have come in, and I'm just trying to make sure that we're answering stuff that's relevant to what we're going through, and then leaving stuff to circle back to. Sure. But this one I think would probably be interesting for you as well. Somebody was asking, can you explain the design reasoning for Akira's self-damage over time? It doesn't seem like it does relevant damage, unless she's your DPS, but I'm sure there's reason for it. I'm like, fire. It's because fire. That's
fire.
It's thematic. Yeah. It's not a design decision so much as it is a thematic decision.
Which can be design based. I mean, there's a lot of overlap there, but it's fire.
Yeah. Oh, I think one of the first ideas for the super, or the ultimate ability was something that burned the whole screen, including all the player characters, and then healed things afterwards.
Yeah.
Just so that your characters would actually take damage from it. But I think that we ended up not going that route.
I'm glad you did, because when that happens in the D&D game, Orkira feels really bad about it, and so I think that guilt doesn't translate well into a design decision.
What else do we have here? Let's see. Asking about Here Are the Planes modifiers and synergies. That's a great question for Justin and David and not us.
Yeah, that is a later question.
Down the road. Yeah, there's a risk in in implementing synergies with characters, in that we don't want to make it so that the heroes of the plains are the only possible champions to use to do everything because their synergies are too good. It's something that we worried about. We worry about and take into account every time we put together groups, because there are synergies for the Waffle Crew, there are synergies for different Ak Inc. groups, since there's two, and there are synergies for the Heroes of Baldur's Gate, there are synergies for the Companions of the Hall, and so it's something that we keep an eye on. We want them to be good and to make it worth using groups of characters, but not so good that you're worried about using characters outside those groups. So.
Yeah, and especially with the Lindra and Orkira coming into the game so close to each other, I can imagine that's also a concern.
That was another part of it, yeah. And gasp, there will be another Heroes of the Plain character in the future. Oh, I know you're all surprised with that spoiler, let me tell you.
Yeah. Orkira was totally surprised. No one saw her coming.
Yeah. Maybe not so soon. Maybe not the next event. That might have been the surprise, the 1-2 punch. But that's fun. Somebody was suggesting that you could sing on Bardic Inspiration next week while Jason Charles Miller plays oboe.
That's a suggestion that I will take under advisement. And no. That no one would enjoy. I mean, Jason may be an amazing oboe player. I can't speak for his woodwind abilities. You don't want me to sing.
No idea, yeah. I know that for the Bardic Inspiration Volume 1 production, Jason did almost every instrument. Didn't play the drums though, programmed the drums, but
which is close.
Yeah, but did everything except like the more nuanced lead guitar with the guitar solos. He brought in somebody for the dobro. He brought in somebody for the
violin.
Fiddle. He brought in somebody for, and the awesome vocals on a couple of songs. He brought somebody in for, but yeah, he did most of it himself. Is a labor of love. What can I say? An after-hours labor of love in many ways.
And it came out amazing. So props to both of you. But yeah, I do not know what his woodwind skills are. Wouldn't surprise me if he's got some.
I don't know. Those multi-instrumentalists they always trip me out.
Yeah.
Because it always looks to me like it's so difficult to master an instrument or to get to a proficiency where you could play in an orchestra at something. You have to be, I think, pretty good at it.
Well, there's a different level of proficiency with being like an orchestral musician versus a multi-instrumentalist, especially when it comes to certain groups of instruments. So like the only reason that I don't know for sure about Jason is because an oboe and a guitar are very different skill sets. Whereas like I wouldn't surprise me because people like him who do a lot of recording do learn how to play a bunch of different instruments because it is easier to be able to just grab it and do it yourself than to try to hire in a bunch of people. And often it's a concern for just the scope of the project. And it's kind of similar to musical theater for pit orchestra musicians, how we'll play 5 or 6 different instruments all during the show, but there's groups of them that kind of make sense. So as an oboist, what I'm usually doing is other woodwinds, flute, clarinet, bassoon, saxophone, that kind of thing. You don't normally see a woodwind doubler who's going to be also doing brass or strings, or guitar. You often bring in a guitarist who can then maybe do some upright bass and also, a few other things. But it's a little easier when you're talking about those groupings.
Yeah, not as it turns out, musicians like Prince are rare.
Yeah,
super rare.
And once again, there's also a difference between becoming literally proficient at an instrument and then being at such a high level of proficiency as to be an orchestral musician in a major orchestra. Like that you don't need to be at that level in order to be proficient enough to be able to do a lot of stuff. But if you're the principal oboist in the New York Phil, that's kind of the next step. Whereas there's a whole grouping of musicians, and I kind of count myself in them as well, who are all just professionals who play a bunch of different instruments. So you don't need to be, Itzhak Perlman in order to play the violin. And to play it well. That was a tangent. Sorry. We should be talking about Orkira.
It was good. And it's whenever we go down into the direction of multi-instrumentalists, it's hard not to like start talking about Prince and Prince related stories and like other musicians like Beck, who, you know, multi-instrumentalist. I can play 30 instruments. It's like, oh my God, when did you have the time?
It's not just that. They tend to have the ability to just pick up a new instrument and get to a level of proficiency incredibly fast.
Yeah.
That's the really impressive thing. Yeah, the stories I've heard about Prince are, that he's basically a savant with that kind of stuff. Can just pick up and within a little while be really good at anything.
Yeah, well, there's, you know, obviously when Prince passed, everybody was telling their stories, but I always think about the one that Dave Grohl did, because there was like a tribute show or something immediately after, or shortly after his passing. And they're like asking Dave Grohl, they're like, so is Prince a better guitarist than you? And he just leaned in, he's like, Prince is a better drummer than I am. Which is funny to me because so many Foo Fighters fans don't recognize that he was an amazing drummer in Nirvana. Are you kidding me? Like they talk about the drummer in the Foo Fighters. It's like, no, he's not actually the best drummer in that band. It's just their lead guitarist singer is busy.
Yeah. Drummers also in bands often get a lot of flack because often, depending on the group, when your drummer is really good, they're not necessarily the instrument that you're focusing on. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of bands that have just amazing percussionists, but because their job for those songs is to provide support and not to, you know, be animal in Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, you don't notice it. And so people just kind of poo-poo them.
Oh, it's such a good reference.
Sorry, I've been watching a lot of the Muppet Show.
No, I know. I just, you know, like my brain is like, Neil Peart, but you're like Animal and Electric Mayhem. I'm like, yeah.
Well, so Neil Peart, I think Neil Peart gets the credit that he deserves because there's only 3 people in that band, and the style of music.
The amount of sound they produced is staggering.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, how many songs did they put out that were practically just instrumentalists, if not just an instrumental track? So he had a little bit more chance to shine.
He also wrote a lot of their music, and like he was a lead for that band who was playing the supporting role on stage, but was also the lead for the band. And you see that sometimes too. Yeah. Anyway.
Also, when you show up on stage with a drum set that is the size of half the stage, it's a little hard to be ignored. that rotating set that he had. I'm just going to be over here on the bongos.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I have a 4th drum set over here. I have a timpani set. Hold on.
Yeah. You wonder how they get into it, given that their stool in the middle of it is so small and it's like almost completely surrounded.
Yeah.
And there's like keyboard stands and stuff in there. Like the overhead shots of the Peart drum set during Rush tours is unbelievable.
Yeah. I would have loved to seen some drone shots of that band. Like if that had ever been a thing, of a drone just like swooping in.
Yeah.
Here's Geddy Lee just rocking out and then just swoop on over. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be cool. Huh. Well, in the future, there'll be a time that we can go see bands again in shows. And while Neil Peart and Prince will not be musicians we get to watch, there are certainly others who are very talented. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I'm waiting on those days. Yeah. They're coming.
Yeah, I saw that Mike Baldy had asked in chat why Averin wasn't in the formation. I actually haven't unlocked Averin. Oh, no, now I can. Yeah, I hadn't reached that point yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you gotta get Averin in there.
Yeah.
Also, I just saw in chat a very appropriate username, Honky Tonk Hero, asking, what's Orkira's relationship with classic rock? I don't know if she's got a relationship, but she is enough of a fan of bards and music in general that I think she would be super happy to listen to whatever people have to offer. She's not picky when it comes to a lot of things like music, like food. So yeah, if you were to sit her down and if you were to do the Captain America thing of like, all right, here's 30 years worth of music to listen to, I think she would be super happy to just try everything.
On that note, I was really happy that they referenced that again on their new Marvel show.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, yeah.
And it's like, it's just
that
Daniel
Marvin Gaye
Gould
moment
adding to it. And he's like, it perfectly encapsulates it. He's like, he's out of line, but he's right.
Yep. I
Oh,
love that show so much. It's been
yeah.
super fun, and it's fortunately it hasn't been as hard to avoid spoilers with that as some other Marvel shows that were happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that one. I think when there's a lot of inherent mystery in a show, where a show is very much trying, it's about peeling back the onion on something. People talk about those spoilers and those aspects of it so much more than a show that, like in this case, is a very straightforward political thriller, and that's not a bad thing about it. I'm sure there will be lots of hard to avoid spoiler discussions related to Loki's show, because based on that trailer, we have no idea what the F is going on with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. We might see. But yeah, I do agree. I think at least the appeal for me for Falcon and Winter Soldier is the relationship between those two men and the interactions that they have, and like all the supporting characters. Like I think they've put together an amazing cast in general. But those two characters are why I wanted to watch, and that's a little harder to quickly spoil. You have to actually watch clips in order to be spoiled by that. So.
Yep.
It's been a little easier to not have to watch it first thing in the morning or at midnight the night before.
Yeah. It's also one of those things. I remember reading an interview with the showrunners, and they were talking about what a gift the scenes were in Captain America: Civil War, where they're just sitting in the VW Bug, and he's like, "Can you move your seat up?" And he's like, "No." Mm-hmm. He's like, "I hate you." And they're like, that scene was such a gift because it encapsulated their chemistry and their relationship perfectly in this narrow time frame. They're like, we're just going to build on that. And then you even get to see them having therapy together. It's wonderful.
I have some issues with that therapist, but that's a completely...
Oh, yeah. There's nothing even remotely professional about it. It's a very Hollywoodized way of approaching any of it. But it was an entertaining scene.
Super entertaining, but you've done therapy wrong when someone who is not a therapist, who has no training whatsoever, is like, oh no, what? But yeah, it was fun to watch the two of them chat, so at least that was that.
So back to D&D and Idle Champions.
Orkira could use therapy, absolutely. Yeah. Like if Orkira could sit down with an actual
could you imagine therapists in the Forgotten Realms? It's like, so I heard you were attacked by, mind flayers. Your village had everybody's brains eaten when you were a child. How has that been unpacking for you for the rest of your life? Probably awful.
Yeah. I mean, not just that, but any of the characters that are adventurers that go out and do these things, like it's... Depending on the type of game that you are playing in and running, there's a lot that these characters go through, especially in a very short amount of time. And even when you have a game that is more lighthearted, just the normal length of in-game time for many adventures, like my podcast, we've been playing for 5 years. And that's just because we've been playing every week and we've been getting together in like 1 to 2 hour increments and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the amount of time that those 4 characters have known each other and have been going through the adventure in the world is months, like literally months, because of the way that D&D works. And so when you think about just how much stress that is in a short amount of time, it's absolutely, Orkira needs therapy for sure.
Somebody was saying in chat that therapy in the Hannibal show is most accurate, to which Jay was like, I don't know about that.
That I have not seen. I'm not necessarily a horror fan. So
I have mixed feelings about it, but I will say this. My wife and I watched it, and Catherine hates horror, hates gore, can't stand any of those things, is not interested. We devoured that show. It is...
Pun intended.
Yeah, actually. But it was... it is one of the most staggeringly beautifully shot shows of all time. Like, in the top 2 or 3, probably. It is unbelievably beautifully composed at all times. They really did their homework about a lot of things food related, to the point where it might make you feel uncomfortable, which is the intent. But like every time you see Hannibal Lecter cooking a meal in it, it is the most incredible sequence of cooking, but you know it's not beef or whatever, right? And the show is dark and it's very messy, and horrifically ultra-violent at times, but I was actually pretty blown away by how incredibly good it is. I can't recommend it enough. You'll know an episode or two in whether or not you can handle watching it, because it pulls no punches right away.
That's good to know.
But I really, really, really liked it, and Mads Mikkelsen, I think, is easily the best Hannibal Lecter. But he has 60 hours of it to play with, so
yeah, you can really dig in.
Yeah,
that might be the kind of show in where I recommend it to Luke, and Luke watches it, and then I just enjoy his enjoyment as he tells me about it.
Yeah.
There's quite a few shows that we do that, in where he just watches, because I know it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to get into, but
That's
I
fair.
know he's going to enjoy it, and then he can just tell me about it, because I don't care about spoilers. So we do that with a lot of movies too. He's a big fan of just whatever movie is on.
He said in chat that he's already watched it all.
Oh yeah, he's already seen Hannibal. Well, Luke, you can tell me about it later, and you can spoil all the
Super
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
And the ending was perfect for a TV show version of Hannibal. And they've talked about doing a reunion thing and doing more, and I'm like, well, I mean, cool. And if you do, I'd totally watch it, because the creative team behind it was amazing. But it also ended pretty perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is sadly still kind of rare for a TV show. No pun intended again.
Yeah, it's very interesting that when it comes to entertainment, there's the trade-off between the art you're trying to create, where you're trying to do justice to that, and then there's this is working, we want to keep people employed, we want to keep this going as long as we can. Yeah. And so you have shows that end intentionally right away. Like Hannibal. I don't think Hannibal was one of them, in that I don't think they intended to end after 3 seasons, but that was a whole different thing. That show was never profitable because it was so expensive to produce, because the cast in it's all Hollywood A-listers.
Yeah.
For a TV show.
But look what you got. I mean, the way you're talking about it, it sounds like that paid off.
It's a narrow slice. I imagine the show will be recognized more now that it's appeared on streaming services than it was when it was on, because it was one of those shows that's like Friday night at 10 p.m. on whatever, and you're like, well, nobody's going to do that. You watch it after the fact on whatever service you have.
Yeah.
But then you have the shows that keep going because they've turned into something that fans love so much, and they don't want it to end, and it's still so profitable for the network, so they keep it going. But they never intended for it to last this long, and I'm very much referencing Supernatural again, which had an intended arc for 5 seasons that they did, and then it carried on for 10 more years.
Well, listen, I'll bring this back to D&D in a way, because that's 2 of the different versions of D&D streams that you see are really that. You see a lot of, we've got 8, 10, 12 episodes, and that's it. And so we're going to do an entire, campaign or whatever. There's going to be one big story arc in these 12 episodes, and then we're done. And maybe there'll be another season or not. And then you get shows like, fortunately, some of the stuff that I've been on and that Orkira has done, which have been more freeform. And I think there is value to finding that middle ground of, we're going to have a chance to tell a story, and we're not limited on episodes, but giving those bespoke arcs, giving those, all right, this next 10 to 12 episodes, even if you don't say it ahead of time, even if you don't, announce it, even if it's just, all right, for these 10 to 12 episodes, we're going to have an adventure, we're going to do a thing, and now there's going to be a end to it, but then these characters will go on to another adventure, and there may be still referential stuff to what happened, but moving on. I think it's hard to do, but when you can do that, it's really fun. And that's the kind of D&D I like to play, both on and off screen, and I've been really lucky to be able to do that. You do end up sometimes, though, with having the same character be on 5 or 6 different shows, but it's just because the shows morph, so...
No, it's all good. I mean, Orkira's been on 4 shows?
So it depends on how you count them. So there was Heroes of the Veil, which was 2 full seasons, 2 full chapters, we called them.
Yep.
That ended and turned into Beyond Heroes, which was the same characters plus freely, the same history, but had moved forward. And so Beyond Heroes, there was kind of a couple of different chapters of that. There was a bunch of shows that we did, which every adventure was a 2-hour. Every show was a 2-hour adventure, and by the end of it, that adventure was done. And then there was a Wildmount arc, and then there was a Theros arc, which is a little bit smaller. And then when that show came to an end, there was a little 4-episode mini series that was just the 3 characters that were moving to join Silver and Steel. So it was basically like a little transition show that we did.
Yeah.
And then there were Silver and Steel. And then now there's D4 and Heroes of the Plains. So it kind of depends on how you count it. And that doesn't even go into some of the one-shots that she's done. I mean, Orkira has done the level 20 B-Dave one-shot, but that's a future Orkira that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. What do you think about that kind of stuff too? Like when you're taking a character, like, because Orkira has kind of gone up and down through the levels a few times now.
Yeah.
But
what do I think about that?
Well, I mean, what's it like for you? Where do you have in your like a headcanon spreadsheet character level, or you just kind of roll with it? And you're like, all right, this week I'm gonna move these things around.
A little bit of both. So before now, with her being on 2 different shows at the same time, which is kind of a different mental place for me to be. The changing of the level was less important than the relationships with the characters, and the history. And either there was a reason or there wasn't, and I'm kind of okay with the hand waving away. So, for example, while she was on Heroes of the Veil, she did a guest appearance on D4. It was the first one. Heroes of the Veil, at the time, I think was level 8 or 9, while D4, they were level 4, I believe. And so when I joined for the guest star, it was a in-canon continuation of Orkira, but she was suddenly level 4. And there was a story reason why that had happened. But there were other times in where I did guest appearances in where she changed level and we just hand waved it away as, oh, it's planar weirdness. And what I've discovered is that while it's fun to have the in-canon reason, it's not as important or necessary as everybody thinks. Like when we all moved to Silver and Steel, all of our levels went down quite a bit. And so we took a little bit of time and talked about, oh, I don't have this power anymore. I lost this ability to do things, just so that there was a little bit of canon continuity. But in the end, the why was just, oh, because we switched planes and this plane is weird. And it doesn't really matter that much. It's more fun when she's a little bit of a higher level because she does get more abilities. And but in the end, like I'm not as bothered by that as I know B-Dave, he's done it way more than I have. He's had to go up and down with Freely quite a bit, and certainly leveling up and down Orkira is way easier, as I am one class, so it's just take this one number and change, whereas he has to like redo Freely every time. But yeah, and so now the in-game reason why, so the 2 versions of Orkira that are going on D4 is D4 is essentially right after what happened in Silver and Steel. And so she is not that different of a level, and she's equal to what's on there now. She's level 8, 9. See, I can't even remember. 8 or 9, somewhere around there. The people are awesome, and that's what matters. Yeah. And then Heroes of the Plains is in canon happening a year later. So that's why she is a higher level there. And that's all that really matters. What I have to keep in my head is that on Sundays, I'm playing a past version of Orkira, and on Tuesdays, I'm playing a more future version of her. And sometimes what ends up happening is something that happens on D4 now affects what happens with future Orkira. So that's been my challenge, and so far it's been fun. I'm sure there will be moments. I've already talked to Dustin and Devin about the moment of like, hey, if you do have to, if it ends up that Orkira dies, like I'll make it work. It'll be fine. Don't pull any punches, because they're awesome. So yeah, you know what? It's all D&D. As long as we're all having fun together, it will make it work. The numbers are not as important as the people.
Yeah, timey-wimey shenanigans are fine.
Yeah, and at this point, this group has been doing it so long that it's almost a character trait in a way.
Yeah.
This, and especially with Orkira, because she's done a couple more of the guest appearances, so she just accepts she is not going to really understand what's going on and is going to have to roll with whatever is happening, and is sometimes going to get stuck places and can't always do the things that she did. So yeah, it's almost become, running gag is the wrong term for it, but a continuing part of her character is she just ends up places, kind of like Freely, although Orkira has a little more direction than Freely. Freely, B. Dave likes to joke that Freely just gets dropped places and he doesn't know how or why. Orkira usually knows how or why.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, I think I ask everybody this question, but I'm still going to ask it. Do you have an arc that you're aiming to complete with Orkira, like a future that you want for her, or somewhere that you want to take it?
She's got a couple of things that I want her to do that she doesn't want to do. But I don't at this point have a specific arc. Mostly because there has been so much transition, especially in the last couple of months. And some of her backstory stuff that was the most important part of her arc actually has happened. Like, I've been able to fulfill some of the questions that were inherent in why she went out to be an adventurer in a way. So she doesn't have as much in the way of like long-term goals. She just feels like she's now a part of this ongoing cycle of keeping her friends safe and doing what the Phoenix needs them to do. Lauren has a few longer term goals, but nothing very grandiose, just questions that I think Orkira should have answered, that one or two of them Orkira doesn't really want to know the answers to.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Is that stuff that you collaborate with Dustin and Todd on, or?
Yeah, so within the space of 1 week, I had both Dustin and Devin on D4, and Todd and the other basically emailing being like, what are some of the things you want your character to do? What's some long-term goals, some short-term goals? And yeah, letting them know about a few things that, I'll talk about one because it's come up in a couple of places. The lore of the Phoenix was something that Todd created a ton of, and I've kind of helped with, and now also Dustin and Devin, because that's a very homebrew god, essentially. And one of the things that Orkira discovered, and Lauren, is that there's only ever two clerics of the Phoenix. There's a cleric of creation and a cleric of destruction.
Oh, okay.
And there's only ever the two of them. And she found this out because she met the other one, and the other one happened to be a horrible, horrible person who was trying to do really bad things, and she had to kill him. And so she doesn't know who the other one is. And so Orkira she knows it's an important thing to know, is who is this other person, and I should meet them and figure that out if there is somebody. But because that first experience was so bad, she's not actively searching. She's just not looking, because she's enjoying ignorance being bliss in this moment. But Lauren thinks it's important for her to know, is there another one out there now, who they are? Also, because as long as she doesn't know that, there's this question of, is she the one who is supposed to be focused on creation or destruction? She wants to be the creation. She wants to be the one who helps and heals. But on a regular basis, you push her far enough and she very quickly becomes the cleric of destruction. So that's kind of her internal arc. And something that,
or thanks to timey-wimey shenanigans, Orkira is both, but it's just different phases of the same existence. You
say that,
like an Ouroboros.
Yeah, listen, that thought has crossed my mind, and that thought has crossed Orkira's mind. And considering how several things have happened to her, and what happened 2 days ago on Heroes of the Plains, you might be right. I'll just leave it at that for spoiler reasons. But yeah, that's a fun thing. But as for like a long term, I would like to reach level 20 and do this. not something huge, but that's because I've been very lucky to have a lot of her stuff addressed already. So
Cool. This is an interesting one. There's some people kind of speculating in the chat that like if Orkira is good, is she the cleric of destruction? They're just like not quite sure about it, but I think that's kind of the point.
So the Phoenix is a neutral entity who basically doesn't. If you think about fire is not good or evil. Fire can do good things and can do bad things. Sometimes the fire is the thing that burns you, and sometimes the fire is the thing that cauterizes your wound. Is that one of those is creation, one of those is destruction, but neither of those are bad.
Yeah.
Is a wildfire that sweeps through a forest, but then clears out the undergrowth so the forest can be healthier, is that good or bad? Is that destruction or creation?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what the Phoenix is. And the cleric of the two clerics of the Phoenix are basically influencing where to put those efforts. You know, am I going to be the good creation to destruction, or am I going to use my power to summon the Phoenix over Waterdeep and destroy all of Waterdeep? Mm-hmm. You know, it's stuff like that. So she wants to be the cleric of creation because she finds it easier to feel good about what she does. But destruction isn't necessarily a bad thing, because when you're talking about the Phoenix, what is the cycle of the Phoenix? Is they destroy and then there's rebirth, and that rebirth is good. So
yeah. Plus,
it's a little
can
more
create
complicated.
Bad things.
Yep.
There is bad creation. You're like, you know what this world needs? More aberrations.
Yeah. There's the fire in your fireplace, and then there's a fire burning down your house, and it's the same fire. It's just, where is it? And one of them maybe creates a space for a new lot for, you know, more homes. It's a tool. She just finds it easier and more to her liking to be the one who is doing the healing and the resurrecting, and not the one who's doing the destroying.
Yeah.
Huh. But she doesn't know.
I'm trying to think if any of these other questions.
We know she's the good aspect because she doesn't have a goatee, but she's a dragonborn. They don't have facial hair, so.
And most dragonborn don't have wings.
Most don't have wings or a tail. Yeah. So, should I explain the wings and tail for those who haven't heard the story yet?
I think we actually had the first time you were ever on our show. I think we talked about that, but that was not recently. So let's do it.
No, that was multiple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this actually happened really early. This happened on Heroes of the Veil within like the first couple of episodes in the first chapter. Orkira used to be a smallish, normal-looking gold dragonborn. No wings, no tail, no spikes, none of that. She was actually considered short. She was like 5'4", which for dragonborn are short. And she has had 2 encounters with a Sibriex, which if they like they're fun bosses to battle in the game. In D&D, they're flesh warpers. They literally change the makeup of creatures, and they're not necessarily good things. They're fiends that are mostly creating demons and devils to fight in awful things. So they're usually creating something deadly and dangerous. And this Sibriex had created an infection that had infected an entire planet that was mutating all these undead. And we were fighting a Dracolich that was infected with this ooze, and Orkira got bit and infected, and everybody else made their Constitution saving throws, and she did not. So she was basically being turned into another dragon type creature, but it was going to be bad. And so eventually she was able to break the hold and remove the infection, but the change had already happened. So that's when she grew wings and a tail and became this slightly stranger dragon creature. And later on that same chapter, right towards the end, for reasons that are easier to just watch the show, we were actually trying to free that same Sibriex from imprisonment because D&D. Mm-hmm. And in the game, what happened was Penelope and Orkira found the Sibriex and freed it, and Sibriex went, thanks, and poked me, and then noped out. And I was like, wait, what? What? And it took several episodes and a 5-year gap in between chapter 1 and chapter 2 to realize that the thanks that the Sybriacs gave to Orkira was, oh, you're a dragonborn, you must want to, and look at you, you must want to be a dragon. So it changed her, and she was starting to actually turn into a dragon, which became a whole thing for her to get rid of and stop. So she grew larger, and so now she's big.
Yep.
She's big. And she eventually stopped that too, because she didn't want to turn into a dragon, because dragons are not fun. So yeah, that is why. The Sybriacs twice in a row decided to mess with her makeup, and twice in a row didn't ask first, and instead just went, I'm gonna have some fun. And so that's why she looks the way she does.
My players all succeeded on their saves against the Sybriacs in my game. I was disappointed. I was really hoping to mess with them.
The funny thing is, like, if you go by just the stats in the book, it takes a little bit longer for some of the transformation stuff to happen. But yeah, it can be bad. Like, your players are lucky. Orkira is super lucky in a lot of ways. She's awkward and disproportionate and constantly has to explain herself. But it could have been a lot worse. The stuff that the Sybriacs can do. Oh. Yes, and I agree, Synaptic, that Sybriacs is a jerk. It didn't ask for consent at all. Yep, there they are.
Gross.
Yeah.
It's a floating pile of cancer.
Yeah, you figure it would. I don't know, actually. If you're a flesh warper, do you really care what you look like?
I think it's all relative. He probably like, what is it with you guys and your defined forms? Everything should look like this, you know?
Yeah, everything just needs more spikes.
Yeah,
all the spikes.
It's like I remember somebody wrote a short story about the movie The Thing, but from the perspective of the Thing.
Oh.
It was creepy and really disgusting, of course. But it was they were trying to get into the head of, or into the mindset of this alien imposter, and how restricting it found each of the forms it took, and how freeing it felt to transition between forms and all this. It was a creepy read for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know where to look that up anymore, because I'm pretty sure it was written by somebody who is actually like a good sci-fi writer who is accomplished and like published, but it was just something they'd done for fun on their website or in their blog like years ago now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Anyways.
Professional fanfic. I kind of like that.
Yeah. Lon Solo would like to know if Orkira has ever considered multiclassing.
Yes. Well, kind of, yeah. She spent 6 years with a half-elf named Harold, who is a bard, in a bag that had a world that was a version of Kryn, which is several of... I've already explained the story, but that's one of the equipment items she has is a piece of his accordion. And when that happened, I'd done the guest stint the first time on D4. We ended up in the bag, and then the next episode, we were out of the bag. So in game time, we were only gone for a couple of seconds to like a minute or two, but in our version of reality, we were gone for 6 years. And so when we both came out of the bag, we both came out changed. And because I had joined D4 for that guest episode and de-leveled, I was able to re-level, and because I in canon had spent 6 years somewhere else, I had options of like, oh, maybe she'll come out different this time. And there was a brief amount of time where I thought about multi-classing, because I'm like, this could be useful to her, having some of the bard powers, and there would be a very easy explanation for where did she learn to do bard things. Well, hanging out with an excellent bard for 6 years. And in the end, as I said, I decided not to, because she is very single-minded on cleric, healing. She did change a few things, but they were very minor. I think I took a different cantrip and something else. But otherwise, she ended up not changing very much mechanically. But yeah, I did, for a brief little bit of time, was like, maybe bard. It was a week. Or actually, I think it was even less than a week. I think I only had a couple days because they were still playing on Sundays, and Here's the Veil was on Wednesday, and that was back when they were playing in person, because in person things were available, and I had gone to visit, and so I had flown back on Monday, and I think I had Monday and Tuesday to figure a bunch of stuff out before I was appearing on Here's the Veil on Wednesday. So there was a lot of frantic emailing back and forth with Todd with like, wait, what happened? What did she do? Where was she? And I'm not enough of a Dragonlance fan to know enough about that. So he was making references, and I'm like, oh, I got to do some wikiing really fast, because suddenly Orkira knows a lot about something I don't know. So there was a lot going on in about 3 days.
Yeah. Somebody in chat, Dark Zero, found the short story I was talking about. The Things by Peter Watts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on clarksworldmagazine.com. So it's a Hugo nominee and a bunch of other awards that it won and was a finalist for and so on. But yeah, it's not a very long read. Like maybe I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. I guess it really depends on what somebody's reading speed is, but yeah, it's creepy and weird, and from the perspective of The Thing. Anyways,
and probably also filled with spoilers for The Thing. So hey, spoiler alert.
Yeah, but one of the things that made that such a good movie is that unlike many of John Carpenter's films, it is so thought out and crafted that there is a lot of debate over the order in which people get replaced. And, you know, it's contentious at the end who is or isn't the Thing. You know, and so it's one of those ones where, because he's never specifically said the answers to it, and I don't think he will, because the movie was a commercial failure at the time, and he's like pretty salty about it. And so when he gets asked questions about it, he's like, I don't give a shit about that. He doesn't talk about it. But you know, it's one of those ones that people have been revisiting for a long time and is now seen as a classic. And this is a possible perspective on it that doesn't necessarily spoil it, but kind of does. Yeah. Somebody's saying that in chat that Big Trouble in Little China was his best film. Maybe. I mean, I love that film.
This is why you need to have Luke back on, so that he can talk movies with you.
Talk about cult movies, yeah. Big Trouble in Little China was good. That was a weird movie. A lot of his movies are weird, though. I've seen, just about everything he's done. And
I've seen Big Trouble in Little China, but it's been forever, so I don't think I could speak at all intelligently about it.
Yeah.
I barely remembered some of it. Oh. Yeah,
it was a weird movie. With Kim Cattrall as the romantic lead, and like Kurt Russell, like in many of his films with John Carpenter, is just a jerk in it.
Yeah. That was, I mean, and movies in the 70s and 80s especially, the male lead is often just
a toxic masculinity cliche for sure. Yeah. Going back and rewatching a lot of those movies, or like, here's a more lighthearted example: going back and rewatching The Muppet Show. Yeah, some of the actions on there or the amount of casual violence, which I know it's The Muppet Show, and I shouldn't be reading too much into it, but it is something to be aware of. It's something that is a little bit startling. It was just like, oh yeah, Kermit did not fall for Miss Piggy's advances, so she just whacks him. It's like, oh, this was a thing. Yeah. Oh, but they also had just some absolute legends on that show.
Oh yeah.
It was wild. Like I remember watching it when I was young, and I remember starting to rewatch it recently and just enjoying how clever it still is in a lot of ways for the stuff that it does. And
I'm excited to get to the Paul Simon episode, because that's still one of my favorite bits of TV of all time. And the Paul Simon episode has versions of his songs that are still my favorite versions of his.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm blanking on her name for a moment. There's a couple other episodes that I'm really excited to see. But yeah, we've been going through it from the first season, and especially in the first season, there's a lot of people who are legends, but would have been people that my tiny child brain wouldn't have known who they were at the time, and would not have gotten some of the jokes that people like. George Burns was on, and half the stuff that George Burns was doing, like, 44-year-old Lauren was like, okay, this is funny if an old joke. There's no way 7-year-old Lauren would have gotten this. What?
Yeah, and you know, I remember as a kid like seeing Mark Hamill on it and being like, yeah, Luke Skywalker. But a lot of the other characters were stars before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a good show, though.
Or were stars in a way that you might not have known about, because also a lot of them were musical theater people who, because of how I grew up, I grew to know who they were. But some of them they were just forever known as Broadway stars, and maybe did a couple of things on TV, but it was just because they did a TV movie or they did a feature film of, you know, Gypsy and stuff like that. So it's been fun. It's been super fun. And then also Mum and Chance.
And also Phenomena.
Oh, and also Muppets with human teeth are creepy.
Oh God, yeah. That's always been creepy.
I kind of always knew that. We just watched an episode the other day that was literally, it was one of their more fanciful musical numbers. And it was just like, imagine pink feather boas just kind of floating about the screen while a song went on. That's the easiest way to describe it, except the pink feather boa that was singing had human teeth. That's weird. Human teeth in a not human is weird.
Yeah, no, they did a lot of weird stuff on that show.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. And I appreciate that every once in a while Muppets become relevant again for a while. Like they kind of circle in and out every few years. You know, like I still remember when they made their first, I guess they're one of their more recent comebacks when they released the Bohemian Rhapsody video on YouTube out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You're like, what? And it was great. It was so great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the short form Muppet stuff I think is some of their, you know, there's some really good movies, but yeah, recently their short form stuff has been on point.
But they're also routinely getting their shows canceled, right? Like Disney Plus did a limited series that got canceled, and they had an Office-like show briefly on TV that got canceled, and you kind of watch them and you're like, this is okay. So I can see why it got canceled. Doesn't have the same kind of magic to it that Muppet Treasure Island or some of the other things that they've done has.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Or even this original Muppet Show, you know, just that frantic joy, that willingness to just do something super weird just for the heck of it. And also that ability to have jokes that the adults are going to get, but still told in a way that seem funny to kids.
Yeah.
Like, I remember watching the original Muppet movie, although this is a joke that ended up in the Muppet Show. I didn't realize that they were testing out some jokes. In the original Muppet movie, there's the scene where Kermit meets Rolf, and he's playing the piano, and he does this big flourish on the piano, and he turns to Kermit and says, "I'm no Heifetz, but I get by." Which is a joke that as even classical music fan me as a child did not get. But I got the idea of what he was talking about. And now as an adult, knowing who Jascha Heifetz is and getting like the 4 different layers in that joke about, well, no, of course you're not Jascha Heifetz. And no, you're not a violinist. And what are you talking about? Like the depth of some of those jokes were not there in some of the more modern versions.
Yeah, and then there's I remember seeing an interview with Kermit where, you know, the Muppeteer is playing Kermit and Kermit's being interviewed. And it was, I don't even know the name of the person who took over for Jim Henson as Kermit.
It was his son for a while, so it might have been.
I don't think it was his son in this case, but they were being asked about Jim Henson. It's like, what is your fondest memory of Jim Henson? And Kermit's like, well, he had really warm hands. And I heard it on the radio, and I was laughing my ass off in my car. And I'm like, oh, that's not a joke for kids.
But they used to make those jokes. Like, even when Jim was alive, there's clips of them doing live appearances as Kermit and Fozzie. And the one that I remember the most is the "Don't look down. There's someone right below you." Do you notice that they mirror your movements wherever you go? It's just come over here and come over there. Just don't look down. It's too creepy. It's too weird. It's too weird.
Yeah. No, some clever meta jokes. I love it. And then if you go back far enough in Jim Henson's career, you get to the pre-Muppet commercial stuff he did that's like freakishly violent or like really offensive. And you're like, wow, this evolved a lot before it became the Muppet Show. So
it evolved a lot, but then he kept some of that idea of this can be something for adults, because if you look at Dark Crystal and some of the other movies that, all right, here's the evolution, but also the remembering that this can be for the entire family. So yeah, that's some of his best work. I still hold those as near and dear to my heart, as much as I am not a movie person.
Yeah, and I remember having nightmares about the Dark Crystal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because it was creepy. That and Return to Oz, where when the 80s got into dark fantasy films, and you're like, this is weird, creepy fantasy where everything sucks. Or Labyrinth even, which is wonderful in retrospect. But at the time, like, there's some creepy stuff in this.
Well, once again, if you haven't seen the Mummenschanz episode of The Muppet Show, Mummenschanz are creepy. And there's a moment that I remember having nightmares of this moment as a kid. And so when I went to go watch this episode of the show as an adult, I'm like, I'm going to watch this and see if this still gives me nightmares. And if you don't know what a Mummenschanz is, it's impossible to explain, but imagine mime done with face masks made of clay so that the people could alter the face masks on the fly. And then imagine two of those face masks getting smushed together, and so now your faces are stuck together forever. It's creepy.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let that sit there in that silence for a moment.
Yeah.
Did we get back to talking about Orkira? Oh.
Yeah, totally. Let's see. There's some balancing related questions that I'm not willing to even try to tackle without
She's been out
Justin.
for like 24 hours. Give her a chance to calm down a little bit. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I need to go back here and remove some of the stuff that we've actually talked about too, because we have covered a lot of these things.
And while
you're
looking
unlock
up
Orkira, the latest event, you play the free play. Well, not the free play, but the initial adventure. You will unlock Orkira after Area 50. I recommend continuing to push to your wall after that, so that you start the next adventure with more favor. I didn't do that today for the show because I had forgotten to unlock Orkira before the show started, and unlocked her in the first few minutes.
It's like you're busy, Dylan, or something. Yeah.
I have gotten busier. It's been kind of strange. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do we have? What two champions would make a good buddy cop film? That's from Luke, actually.
Oh, there's so many. It depends. Do you want the buddy cop in where they're actually friends, or do you want the antagonistic buddy cop? Because it can go a bunch of ways. I mean, I joke about this enough. Like, the Orkira Freely friendship is one of true friendship with a tinge of that kind of exasperation that a good buddy cop film would have, mostly because of the two of them think in very similar ways about what the right thing to do is, just not the right way of going about it. And Freely's usually a lot faster at running on ahead. So that would definitely be an interesting buddy cop kind of thing. We're thinking Falcon and Winter Soldier, where it's more antagonistic.
Lots of Riv and Freely suggestions.
Yeah, they're also the friendly buddy cop. There's a little bit of competition there, especially when they're
Bailoff and Orkira.
Yeah, although the way Mark plays Bailoff, and where he's a little more willing to let things slide and go along with the good people for a while, like, I think they'd still be friends for a very long time until Bailoff did something like super evil. Yep.
I do appreciate that Mark is always there to suggest murder.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, why not cut to the chase and kill those guys?
Yeah. No, he's awesome. I mean, it wouldn't be buddy cop because they'll eventually kill each other, but Orkira and Arkin,
Mm-hmm.
that's a not that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Archon is such a bro until a point, and then he kills you and takes your stuff.
And she'd be fine with him being a bro. She would not be fine with him resurrecting or creating undead and preaching Tiamat. Those two things she would have very large problems with. I would love to see Orkira and Dinar hang out a little bit, especially since they would have Dragonborn with tails that to jump off of, and then I think there would be a lot of personality interesting moments between the two of them. Once again, I think they would get along really well, but there would probably be some he's got enough of an ego on him that there would be moments where they would clash that I think would be a lot of fun. I don't know, I have to think about this more. I'm mostly focused on pairings of Orkira with other people at the moment, so maybe I'm too focused. Yeah. Orkira and Deacon are not going to get a chance to hang out. And that there's not a slot on here where if Orkira had ended up anywhere, there'd be somebody in that slot. And we'd be like, oh, she doesn't get to hang out with. But not being able to hang out with Deacon is like, oh, that hurts a little bit.
Yeah, that just makes me want to play Deacon's song.
Yeah, well, it's a good song.
Yeah, I'm going to change the background music to it. Where is it? There it is.
Yeah, I would love the chance to be able to play with Dinar, to play with Ryan as Dinar. That would be so much fun. Oh, geez. Let me think. Well, are there any other questions while I'm thinking about other champions? Like, Orkira herself is an amicable kind of person, as long as you're not doing something super evil, especially at the time that she meets. So it'd be very easy for her to initially get along with any of the roster, even Arkin. As long as Arkin wasn't immediately doing something super evil, like, she's friendly. She's not quite Penelope levels of friendly. Penelope is you are my friend even before I met you. Orkira needs to meet you, and it takes a little bit of time before she'll call you a friend. But she likes getting along with people, and she doesn't have a lot of hang-ups when it comes to, like, just people in general. Like, she doesn't have a lot of preconceived notions, so she just likes to get along with pretty much anybody.
Now, would you say that has something to do with you playing Orkira?
Probably a little bit, yeah. But also a little bit of who she is and what she's gone through. I mean, she was always a very friendly character, and not someone who, she's got a couple of hang-ups, but they don't have anything to do with other people. They're like, she doesn't like dragons, but how many times do you come across a dragon? And the few times that we've come across a dragon, she's had problems. She has this innate hate of them because of the history that she's been given with dragons. But like with other people, no, not really. And then even more so as she has become this altered, weird character in wherever she goes, people react to her, and not always in positive ways. So she's definitely become the person that, like, doesn't judge until you do something like try to create undead or do something evil, and then she's very judgy. But at that point, you've kind of earned it.
Somebody was asking in chat if you're ever going to be a guest on Garwar's show.
Yes, actually. Hey, I'll go ahead and announce this now. Garwar's probably in chat. I'm going to be showing up on Garwar's Friday show next week. I'm looking up the date right now. The 16th. So we're going to do... So for those that don't know, I've been playing Idle Champions for a very long time. But I am an idler when I play. I'm the person who sets the game up and sets up their formation and then lets it run and walks away, and then like 4 hours later comes back to it. So even though I've been playing for an incredibly long time and I have all of the champions and I love the game, there's still some things I haven't done. There's still a couple of variants I still haven't beaten. There's still a lot of stuff that I have to do. And so on next week's game, or next week's show, Garwar is going to help me through some of the more difficult variants and some of the more difficult things to do and give me some advice.
Cool.
So it's not necessarily going to be specifically Orkira related. It's going to be more more being able to help people out like me who play a lot in little bits. I'm not, I'm an idler when I play. So help me, Gardevoir. You're my only hope.
Long-term player.
Yeah. I can probably look it up. I could probably post my Steam stats somewhere with like, I know I started playing not long after the game, because I remember seeing the game. Was it at the Stream of Annihilation? Yeah.
It wasn't announced, but that was when Eric and Clive were showing it to people.
Yeah, because I remember meeting Eric there, but I'm like, because I remember he was talking about it being on Steam, and I had a Mac at the time, and I'm like, is that gonna work? And so for like the first couple of months when the game came out, I was actually playing it on Luke's computer. I wasn't playing it on mine because I had a Mac and Steam was not happening on Macs. And then things got fixed. So I've been playing for a very long time. I like to set the game up and then it runs for like 5 hours. I'm not the person who comes and is actively playing for 3 hours, so I don't get as much done.
Fun fact, actually, the Stream of Annihilation was when Clive and Eric met Joe, and Joe was like, I want to be in that game. And Clive describes it as looking up at Joe, and Joe being like, I want to be in that, and Clive being like, okay, like looking up at him.
Yeah, I can picture that moment, yeah.
For those who don't know, Joe is pretty big. He's a big dude. What is he, like 6'6" or something? I don't know. He's a big man.
I have a picture with Mr. Manganello, and yeah, I mean, I'm not a big person, so I've pictures with a lot of people where I don't even come up to their belly button, and he is one of them.
Yeah.
The Stream of Annihilation, not the Stream of Many Eyes, I have a couple pictures from that are ridiculous. It looks like everybody else is normal sized, and I'm just like a hobbit. I look tiny. Because
there's some tall people, right? Like B-Dave is 6'9". Todd is 7 feet tall too. Like Todd's not short. So, the cast of like, I guess at the time it would have been Beyond Heroes or Heroes of the Veil, but like the cast stands together, and it's like,
it's everybody and then Hope and I.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
You and Hope are noticeably shorter than the rest of the cast.
Yeah. That was one of the best moments when I finally got to meet Hope in person. She's like, "You're not as tall as I thought," and I'm like, "Yes, we're human sized." Like, because yes, the rest of the cast is made up of incredibly tall people. So but yeah, there were a lot of people at that stream, and I have multiple pictures of me with people much taller than me. That's probably the one thing about Orkira that I subconsciously did at first. The fact that when she started off, she was a small dragonborn. She was because I think dragonborn on average are over 6 feet, and I had made her like 5'3", and now she's like huge. So things change.
I still remember at the Stream of Many Eyes showing up, and we were doing because on the last day they had the Jox Machina game, and so Travis Willingham was there, and the Big Show was there, and Joe was there, and like Joe's trainer, who is some CrossFit champion who has like the biggest biceps I've ever seen in person. But I remember afterwards when the Waterdeep set was getting broken down, and also literally broken as people were stealing chunks of it. Like we were carrying stuff back to the Airbnb that we were staying at, and I walked past the Big Show who was like standing outside under the streetlight, and he's got his cane and he's like kind of like talking to somebody, and I'm like walking by, I'm like, holy shit, like that guy is big.
When they finished their game, I don't know if you remember, but they brought everybody who was still around back up on stage, and we sang one of the goodbye song from the Sirens show. And I Yes, yes. And because part of my job that whole weekend had been I'd been playing with the sirens. And so we came on first and I was standing behind the big show and I was not taller than he was and he was sitting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I had to like scooch over to the side so that they were like, move, 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 move.
Absolutely
like,
massive human. Like holy
yes.
crap. Yeah.
Everyone sitting down at that table was.
Well, you already
massive.
feel like a tiny human standing next to Travis or Joe, who are like those like 6'6", 6'7", like big muscular dudes who are just big people, and then the big show makes them look like they make you look like just towering over them. You're like, holy shit!
Yeah.
How much do you eat? Yeah.
So nice though. He was such a nice guy. I got a chance to talk with him for a tiny little bit afterwards because we were right there. And yeah, just like super happy to be there and super happy to be amongst a whole bunch of nerds who are just nerding out.
Yeah.
And like he had so much fun during the game and it was awesome. It was so much fun.
That's probably my favorite thing about D&D Live is everybody felt very free and comfortable to be a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It was the same with the first one. There was just so much imposter syndrome going on along at the same time that it took a bunch of us a while to calm down. I think the second one, we were kind of more prepared to just have nerd summer camp. But that first one, I do remember a lot of, holy shit, I'm sitting at the same table as, and then just mentioned anyone that was there.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a few questions here.
Yeah, more questions.
Yeah. One
Grog
of them
and Orkira buddy cop shows.
Grog and Orkira? Hey, that'd be great. If there were to be a there were to be a bardic inspiration song for Orkira on Tuesday,
which there will be,
what style would you think it would be?
So I have a couple of ideas. I have two that are the easy answer, and then I have one that's a little more esoteric. Orkira would actually really love to have like a Mert the Moneylender style bar song. Like,
okay. Yeah.
She would love that kind of happy-go-lucky, very upbeat, very fast, something that everybody could sing along to. She would love that. I don't know if that would work for her as well. I think, and I don't know how feasible this is, I would love to hear some klezmer. I would love for her to have one of those really classic klezmer songs, because when you think about klezmer, they're all bittersweet because of the style and the tonality. So they're happy, but they're happy with an undertone of we've gone through some stuff. And so one of the faster, more joyful klezmer songs that are out there, I could definitely see her doing klezmer, but I don't know how much that's really going to work for bardic inspiration. Plus my clarinet playing is horrible, so I can't. Just don't ask. And then the other thing that I was thinking, there's a couple of songs that are, when people have asked me to put together like playlists for Orkira, whether it's songs that either she would like or songs that I think evoke her, there's a couple songs that I think about that evoke her that are amongst the Bare Naked Ladies soundtracks or albums.
Which ones?
And I think it's on Silver Ball. There's a song on there that's literally called Get Back Up. And it's all a song about you're going to get knocked down, and the important thing is that you stand back up and try again. And there's a couple of lyrics in that song that are very evocative of her, of that idea of like, it's not about the fact that you got knocked down. It's the fact that you're going to try again. It's the fact that it's not how well you fall. It's that you've survived the landing, that kind of thing. Okay. And there's another...
Like Chumbawamba.
I mean, you get knocked down and you do get back up again. You're never going to keep her down. And yeah, there's a line from a different song, not necessarily the whole song. Like Bare Naked Ladies is mostly known for kind of their pop folk rock.
Yep.
But especially in the last couple of years, they've done a lot of really interesting acoustic stuff or some darker things. And there's a line from one of their songs, and I'm blanking on the name, but I can hear the song in my head, and where it's, when my time comes, I won't be leaving this earth, but what I've done for people will determine my worth. And that's like 100% her. So yeah, if we're gonna go, if she had a favorite band, and if I was picking songs that were specific for her, it'd be Bare Naked Ladies.
Canadian folk rock. All right, got it.
Canadian folk rock. There you go. Is Jason in the chat? Do you want? How do you feel about either klezmer or Bare Naked Ladies? What do you think?
I'm especially curious. I'm curious which of those he is more familiar with.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's familiar with both, but yeah, those are it. I'm also a big Bare Naked Ladies fan. I have been. That's one of the few non-classical concerts I've been to. So, but I grew up in Buffalo, so I'm practically
that's
from
as
Toronto.
next door to Canada as it gets, in that it's just a bridge away.
I mean, there's songs of theirs and where they reference specific streets in Toronto that I know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up there, but yeah, I've been a fan of theirs for a while, and so that style of folk rock.
Interesting.
But more their not the actual rock stuff, not If I Had $1 Million or any of their jokey stuff, and not their rock stuff. It would be more their folk, their more acoustic, their more experimental stuff.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think my favorite Bare Naked Ladies song is still their cover of "Lovers in a Dangerous Time," which is off their first record.
Yeah. With
that terrible black and white music video where they're in the back of a pickup truck in like some Toronto suburb or something, just driving around the neighborhood. I'm like, wow, that's a low budget, crappy video. Definitely a Canadian artist.
Hey, listen, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, right? Especially when you're trying to, when you don't have any money and you need to make a music video because of this MTV thing that's happening.
Yeah. And
I still love. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that was one of the ones that they did right when the pandemic started and people started going into lockdown. They started doing selfie recording videos and syncing each other up.
Cam jam.
Yeah,
yes, I love those.
I didn't see anybody else doing it yet when they started, but lots of bands did eventually do it. And that was one of the ones they did first. I think it was the second one they did. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, I interrupted.
No, I love those selfie cam jams, and they're really well done too. I mean, obviously they're a bunch of recording artists, so they're all going to have some decent recording gear, but like they're synced up really well, and I love the feel of them, and yeah, those are definitely good. There's a whole bunch of songs off of Bare Naked Ladies Are Me and Bare Naked Ladies Are Men, because they put out that weird dual album a while ago. That whole album I really like, but there's specifically one. What I've always liked about Bare Naked Ladies is there's a whole bunch of songs that are not your classic love songs. Mm-hmm. They're not just I loved someone, I lost someone, I loved and lost someone, or what a lot of songs are about. Bank Job is my favorite song off of that whole album, because it literally is about a guy lamenting the fact that the bank job went bad because of a bunch of nuns, and it's this like. It's when you listen to the song, it's this very kind of bittersweet, slightly angry, morose song, except there's this weird little punchline in the middle, and where, it got ruined because they walked into the bank to do the robbery and there were a bunch of nuns there and everybody felt really bad about robbing a bunch of nuns. But yeah, I love their stuff.
That takes me back. Just thinking about that. Oh man. Bare Naked Ladies, that's just it's not a topic I expected.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And for those of you who are into Canadian music or curious about more Canadian music, there's always the Tragically Hip, but I'm not going to get into that on this show.
I'm not as much of a fan of theirs, although I saw them open. What did I see them open for?
I don't know. They never seem to really take off outside Canada the way that I thought they would have, given the amount of material they made.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of artists that are huge in Canada, and Bare Naked Ladies were one of them for forever. Mm-hmm. That just
They're still
that
big in
was
Canada.
where-
They just actually made it elsewhere as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but there's that whole like Tragically Hip that I think you only know about if you're Canadian or Canadian adjacent. But if you are Canadian or Canadian adjacent, like I remember listening to Tragically Hip on the radio because
Our Prime Minister cried about the death of the lead singer on TV.
I remember that.
Right?
Yeah.
More people watched their final show than pretty much anything in the history of the country. It was, it's staggering. And I did see them live on my birthday once, actually. They were awesome. But they're also as punctual and Canadian as you can imagine in that their set time was supposed to be at 8 or whatever, like 8 p.m. And it's like 7:59 hits 8. It's like, boom, the drum starts. And I'm like in line for drinks. I'm like, they're starting on time? I was like, what? and then they played their sets.
They were more
and then,
Canadian than rock.
Yeah. They were just like, they were so punctual. But I will say this. The last time they played in Victoria was for a music festival that ended up being kind of a disaster because it was the first time the organizers were setting up a music festival of that size in this confined outdoor space. And so the logistics of it were being worked out, and a lot of things didn't work out. And to make matters worse, because there were problems with like the liquor licensing for the festival and all this stuff, a lot of it was outside their control. But a thunderstorm rolled in during the festival. Thunderstorms here are very rare in and around like the Victoria. It just does not happen that often.
Yeah.
And not only did we get like a real thunderstorm with real lightning, like the band, the Sam Roberts band were supposed to be on before Tragically Hip, and they didn't get to play because they're like it's actually not safe right now. It's a torrential downpour. There's an electricity hazard. There's pools of water on the stage, and there's like lightning, and so they didn't play. And then the Hip were like, "Oh, we're playing," and they played. And so there are photos of them on stage in a thunderstorm, lightning arcing across the sky behind them as they're playing the only show that they played there. And then, that was just a few years before Gord Downey passed away. I think that was the last time they came here. It was awesome.
That sounds awesome, but also that sounds incredibly dangerous. So
they were game. Plus, there's 12 or 13,000 people there who were waiting to see them. So they
not going to wait for a thunderstorm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see too many outdoor concerts when I was living in Buffalo or Toronto because most of the stuff we would do would be indoors for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And thunderstorms are way more common. So even some of the outdoor stuff, everything was covered because that could happen, especially living that close to the lake. So
yeah. They're just unusual in this like little area. Like the west coast of Vancouver Island gets them a lot more frequently than the southern tip. It's just the weather around the area around Victoria. I can't believe I'm talking about the weather. But Victoria is basically like it tips below what would be the American border. It's below the 49th parallel. It is surrounded by mountains on one side of the island, and then on mountains on every other side on the other side of the water. So there's the Olympic Peninsula and all those mountains wrapping all the way around into the Rocky Mountains around the outside. And so like we don't get those kinds of weather patterns. We get wind and sun.
Yeah.
And lots of both.
It's the same here in Seattle, just add a lot more fog, which is the one thing when I moved out west that took me a very long time to get used to was the amount and the quantity and quality and consistency of the fog. The fact that it could be 3:00 in the afternoon and there's still fog on the ground in the sun, that still startles me every time. And I've been here for more than 11 years.
And it's also a strangely isolating feeling.
Yeah. Very Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or Silent Hill, if you prefer.
Why not both?
Yeah. Okay, what else do we have here?
Let's back away from weather and get back to Orkira.
Just unlocked Orkira and super excited to have a slot 1 replacement. Only played for like a month. Hey, right on.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah.
I hope I can help. I hope. I know Bruner is kind of awesome. So, hi.
Let's see some questions related to balancing and bugs that I'm not going to get into.
Come to our Discord or submit a ticket if you've seen. I'm going to be community manager for a moment here. Please, if you have encountered a bug or issue with your game, come to our Discord or submit a ticket. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but the best way to do it is through the support link in game and give us some details about what's going on. And if it's a known issue, we'll update you when things get fixed. And if it's not, then we'll try to get them fixed quicker and we can get some more details. So
Yeah.
definitely, if you've got an issue, let us know, but let us know through the support ticket so that we can get information from you to help.
Yeah. Daza points out that Orkira could use a belt of dwarven kind to have a goatee and look evil.
I mean, Orkira could use a lot of magic items. She's just scared of some of them, and she never gets a chance to have very many. So, but it'd be funny, you know, having a belt of dwarven kind would be funny mostly because doesn't that increase your strength?
I think so. It just gives you a dwarf beard. Yeah.
Well,
it gives you a Garwar beard, really, if we're being honest.
Which is epic, but I think that's a wonderful byproduct that can happen. Belt of dwarven kind. See, now I gotta look this up. Now,
it's a con boost. Con +4.
It's a con. Yeah, her con is actually pretty good, especially now that I have decent rolled stats. Yeah. So I used to have Orkira was the standard array until she moved to D4, which was fine. And then on D4 they roll all of their stats. I told this story before. I'll tell it again because I love Dustin and Devin so much. So they're like, we need you.
They're amazing. Met them at both the Stream of Many Eyes and the Descent, and they're awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Go watch D4. Go, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the show. I'm on the show because I love the show. Kind of the same way I ended up working here because I love the game, and so here I am. So they co-DM a show called D4, which is on Sundays on the Rock Punch ATL channel. Go check out their Twitter at D4DND. You can search for it.
That sounds correct.
That sounds correct. So when Silver and Steel ended and Orkira was coming to D4, she had been using the standard array for forever, and that's when I switched to being what?
D4 D&D RPG.
RPG. Thank you. So I'd switched over to being a Phoenix Cleric, and then they said, oh, well, you know, all of our characters roll their stats. Even though you're coming in at not a level 1, we want you to roll your stats. I went, okay. And so I used the D&D Beyond dice roller so that I could just screen cap it and send it off to Dustin was doing the rolling for me. Or not the rolling. Eventually Dustin did the rolling for me because, and I'm pulling up the stats now. So I did the rolls, and Orkira got a 7, 12, 5, 11, 11, 14.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So I sent that off, and I half jokingly said, welp, I won't, because I told
At least
Dustin,
I won't be playing this character for long, huh?
Well, what I had told him is, like, I'm okay with kind of anything in a bunch of the stats. Like, some of them are not as important as others, but her wisdom needs to be high so she's effective, and the 8 in her intelligence is really important because that's part of her character, is just not being that smart. And so I sent off those stats, and I jokingly said, well, I don't have to worry about a low stat in her intelligence anymore, huh? And like 20 minutes go by, and then a new set of stats showed up from Dustin. Which is an 8, 16, 16, 14, 17, 13, which is what she has now, although with modifiers. This is before the modifiers. So he sent me the new stats, and he's like, yeah, your stats were death by farming. We're not going with those. So if you like Orkira's stats in the game, you can thank D4, because before then, her stats were actually not amazing, because I built Orkira back before Tasha's, you know, and you couldn't move around any of her stuff. And before Tasha's, Dragonborn were not one of the lineages, one of the races that were ideal for clerics because of where their bonuses were. So rebuilding her with the better stats, the lineage stats and the better rolled stats that Dustin made definitely has helped her not be to be way more effective, let me put it that way, especially her charisma. So
there's a question here mentioned directed at you, talking about, and I didn't catch this, but you mentioned last stream about wanting input about issues with colorblindness and sight impaired players. Where can people bring up that suggestion? They were asking about, like, maybe the Discord.
Yeah, come to the Discord for sure.
And Jamman J would like to know what death by farming means.
Oh, it's an idea that, like, if you're playing a heroic style RPG, TTRPG, like D&D, like Dungeons and Dragons, you're going to be more powerful than the standard person that you come across. And in D&D, the average score, kind of the baseline score, is 10. So anything that's below that means that you're below average. And most players have most of their stats above a 10 because they're supposed to be heroic. They're supposed to be larger than life and magical and everything. So if you have a lot of stats that are below 10, then you might not have even survived being a farmer. Mm-hmm. And when you've got a 5 and a 7 and a couple of 10s and maybe an 11 or 2, yeah, that's a little rough if you want to go out and be a hero and fight mind flayers.
Yeah, when I DM for players, I don't think I would let them have that many stats that low, just because, unless they really want it, because they're one of those diehard players like, I'm going to randomly roll my entire character, all of my stats, which race and class combo, like, I don't care, I could do whatever. And it's like, cool, that's the route you want to, that's the route you want to, you know, that's the way you want to go. Go for it.
Yeah.
But I don't want a player to feel like they have a huge disadvantage in playing because they rolled poorly.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you rolled a bunch of 18s because your rolling luck is super good, it's like, I don't want you to trivialize everything you come across either.
Yeah. No, it's like, this is why most of the time, especially when I'm DMing, I tell we don't roll stats. I have my players use the standard array or point buy, and that's so it's easier to have a character that can be balanced in that way. And so when so you're still effective at lower levels, so you still have some good stats and a bad stat or two to have a play off of. And when you're level 16, 17, 18, 19, you're not like scrambling for something to do with your level up. Mm-hmm. You know, when you reach that point where the ASI isn't that important and you're running out of feats, it can kind of suck. But there's also something to be said for, like, there's also a difference between like, all right, you're going to get one roll on your rolled stats and that's it, versus what ended up happening with me where, all right, here's my roll. And then, you know, there was obvious care put into, let's make sure that you've got stats that are balanced with the rest of the party. So there's different ways of doing it. And definitely if you're going to roll stats, I do prefer the, let's give you a couple chances. Let's make sure that, you know, it's something still balanced, even if it's going to be random. But for one shot, it can be fun to hit that random button and just see what you get.
Yeah, that's what I did for the one shot we did with Garwar. Was I randomly rolled that character, and I'm like, all right, well, I got a couple high stats. I'm like, Garwar, do you care if I make a character very specialized in doing this one thing? I'm like, it's kind of annoying, just so you know, so I'm asking you. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, all right. You know, which is why, you know, 2 psychic knives later, the boss is dead.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was because it was for a one shot. If I thought we were going to play on a regular basis, I would have just made a character with a personality.
See, but I think you could have taken that character. Yes, mechanically they're built for that one thing, but I think you could have definitely taken that exact character and, I mean, build a personality is the harsh way of saying it, but like you wouldn't have had to change the mechanics in order to make that a more fleshed out character.
No,
I think there's something really nice about that.
They were based off of another character that I had made that did have a personality. I just because it was for a one shot, I have a hard time. Like, it takes me a few sessions to like get into the character with a group of people and to play and react as them. I can't flip that on because I don't play as much D&D. And I was just like, like, I'm not gonna wholesale copy the personality from the last one. I'm like, I'm just wanting to test to see if this subclass combo is as broken as I think it is. And I'm like, it's not far off how I thought it was. It's pretty busted.
I love the soul knife though. It's so much fun.
The soul knife is super cool. Yeah, I just thought the psionic warrior and the soul knife together were a bit much. I'm like, oh, I can just add psychic dice to stuff. All right.
And to something that you just mentioned, I was not also one of those people who could just drop into a character without a problem, because I was mostly a DM for a very long time, and Orkira has been the longest character I've ever played ever. And so now she just kind of lives in the back of my head all the time. And I can drop into her whenever I need, but like I've been playing her for years, so it can take a while before that feels comfy.
Yep, absolutely. Anyways, we actually have to wrap it up in a minute or two here.
Any last minute questions we can answer?
Yeah. What is Orkira's take on the rest of the BFGs other than Harold?
Oh, yeah. So the for context, the BFGs are what the group in D4 call themselves. And if you want to know what BFGs stand for, you'll just have to watch D4. Okay. I mean, they're all awesome. Yeah, yeah. So Seisha's lovely and super smart and really nice. And I know she's really worried about what's going on with her wings, but I think her wings are awesome. Yeah. And Vinley is. We're not going to talk about the stuff that she does with the necromancy, but otherwise Vinley is awesome and also super smart. There's a lot of super smart people in the BFGs. I don't know. Maybe I'm just I just like hanging out with super smart people. But yeah, she recently became a cleric, and that's awesome. Yeah. And there's V, who is really big and really fun and has amazing fashion sense and super fun and really strong. Yeah. I'd like to see her and Briv hang out. She could arm wrestle Briv. That'd be amazing. And then there's Voss, who is scary and smart and scary. Yeah, he's kind of scary, but I like him because he's always thinking and he's always trying to help. But yeah, he's kind of scary. Also, I think he gets upset when I know when he's gone. I think that's everybody because they said everyone other than Harold, right? So, if I forgot someone will tell me in chat, and then I'll feel really, really bad. Yeah, Orkira, no, just for reference, has the observant feat, and so her passive perception is a 28.
That's hilarious for a character with low intelligence.
Yeah. Well, so the reason I took it is because it's part of her character, actually. All she does is look out for her friends. All she does is try to make sure that her friends are okay. And between the flying and that, I figured it made a lot of sense for her. Like, wisdom is your perception check anyway. So yep. She already had a very high perception, and then giving her the observant feat makes her passive just ridiculous. So there are times in where Voss, who is a swashbuckler rogue, who is very good at stealth, you know, when you are a rogue and you roll a 26, 27 on your stealth, you're doing really well. And Orkira can still see you.
Yeah.
He's polite enough not to mention it, but we had a whole episode that was happening during a party, and he kept sneaking away to go do stuff. And so later on, like, I just mentally kept track of, like, when he would stealth and if it was under my passive. And so afterwards, she could be like, I saw you leave a lot. What were you doing? So yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that's my favorite thing about min-maxing is picking a stat to make ridiculous. I had one character for a one-shot that had initiative of plus 14, and it was so fun. It's just like, I mean, we're gonna roll. I'm going first, but we're sure we can roll. Like,
yep.
But chances are I'm gonna run up and sneak attack you before anything happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah, having a reliable talent like that is really good. Yeah. This isn't even a character with the highest passive, because I did have I had a rogue in another game. I had a not the mastermind. Actually, it might have been the mastermind. Where we got to level 20 and that character had a passive perception of 32. We got to the point that was in the Demon Plague game that I played.
Proficiency and expertise plus feats plus wisdom plus plus
the observant feat, and that was like her entire thing, was she was observant and deceptive. And James Odicassa was the DM of that wonderful game. I miss that game so much. And we went to level 20, and I remember it got to the point in where he would describe a place, you would describe a room, and then he would just look at me and say, and here's what you see. Like, she just could see through space and time. So.
Yeah. It's like, most people can see this color spectrum, but you see all the way to here.
Yes. It was a rare moment at the end of that game where he was able to do something that my character could not see. But it was also super fun because of the way I played her. She was super low charisma, so she also didn't pick up context cues. So every once in a while I would observe something. She had an incredible insight and an amazing perception and 0 charisma. She had a 6 in charisma. So she would just blurt stuff out. Mm-hmm. So it got a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But we're almost out of time, and I'm talking about a character that I haven't played in a couple of years, so I should stop.
It's all good. This has been our show for Thursday, April 8th,
Yay!
2021. Thank you for joining us today, for participating in the Idle Champions and Dungeons & Dragons communities. You're all awesome. This show exists because of lots of really amazing people behind the scenes, including our producer, moderator, Jay, our partners at Dungeons & Dragons, and, of course, Lauren.
And Dylan.
Sure. I'm also here. Take care, everybody. We will catch you tomorrow morning for Critical Champions. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy unlocking and playing Orkira Ildrex. She's awesome. She's in slot 1. You should be getting all your chests for Orkira, and I eagerly anticipate seeing reviews of the character on our forums and Discord and all that stuff.
Please tell me I'm awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Don't break our hearts now. Tell us the truth. Tell us that she's awesome. Anyways, take care, everybody, and see you tomorrow. Cheers.
Bye.